In this video, I'm going to share with you the 5 suspension upgrades that I've done to our truck, explain why I chose them, how they work, and how they perform. I'll be going in the order that I installed the upgrades and leave links to everything that I can down in the video description. Make sure you watch until the end, where I'll share my conclusions and in what order I would install upgrades on a new rig. Right now, we have a 2018 Ram 3500 Dually Diesel CrewCab long bed truck. It has a payload capacity of right around 4,600 pounds with a 14,000 pound GVWR, and we use every pound of that capacity. Depending on how much water we have, our rig weighs in at between 13,700 pounds and 14,200 pounds. When we first hit the road in November of 2019, the truck was completely stock and handled the weight pretty well, although it felt a little soft. During our initial 1,500-mile run down to Florida, people were flashing their high beams at us on the highway. We were sagging in the back, and that was causing our low beams to be pointing at people's eyes. Not cool. When we got to our first stay near Kissimmee, Florida, I started to look at easy solutions to solve our saggy rear end. My first plan of attack was to get some upper and lower stable loads by torque lift. I was able to find these used on eBay from a seller that had never actually installed them, and I got them for about half the price of new. I installed the lower stable loads first, and those made a significant difference. I never measured the headlight angle, but it reduced the squat by about 2 inches and stiffened the ride quality quite a bit. The first upgrade really showed me how soft the suspension was before. I tested these out for a few days before installing the upper stable loads. These are tough rubber replacement pads that cause the helper springs to contact much sooner when loaded. These really helped reduce the squat by another inch or so and really leveled the truck out. The combination of the upper and lower stable loads pretty much solved the squatting issue. They provided a much better ride and improved handling drastically. The beauty of these bolt-on upgrades are that they are only active while loaded. When you're unloaded, the truck will ride like it did from the factory. Right around the 6,000 mile mark, one of our factory-installed shock absorbers had a blowout. The seals let go and it leaked the fluid out. I did a little reading and found that the factory-installed shocks were pretty terrible and seldom reached 10,000 miles. I started doing my research and chose the Bilstein 4600 shocks to replace the factory shocks. In my research, I found an internet battle between the Rancho 9000 adjustable shocks and the Bilstein 4600 and Bilstein 5100 series shocks. What I learned in my research process is that they all work very well, but there is some confusion. The Rancho shocks are adjustable, and this is great to get things dialed in and gives you the ability to soften the suspension while unloaded. However, while looking into these shocks, there were several complaints about premature failure and the adjusting knob getting stuck to the point where it wouldn't turn anymore. Also, people said they tend to set it to the highest stiffness setting and then never touch it again. As for the Bilstein shocks, the 4600 series is for trucks with factory suspension, and the 5100 series is for trucks with a suspension lift. The 5100 comes in various lengths to accommodate different lift heights, and the 4600 is built to fit stock applications. The reviews indicated that the Bilstein shocks were very reliable with very few failures. So I chose the Bilstein 4600 shocks and have been very happy with them so far. 53,000 miles later, they're still working like new with no leaks or problems. They did make a noticeable difference in handling and significantly reduced motion, especially on rough highways. A friend of ours had to leave the 2022 Truck Camper Adventure Rally early, and they were going to give away their TImbrens at the swap meet. I agreed to do it for them. However, I got tied up recording videos and missed the swap meet altogether. So I had the TImbrens in my rear box for several months. I found them and decided to see if I could install them, even though they were designed for a mid-2000s GMC truck. I did some reading and found that the TImbrens were nearly identical to the kit for my truck, so I did some measurements, drilled some holes, and got them mounted. Sasha and I then went on a trip to Galveston, Texas, and I was able to try them out before installing the sway bar. And they are fantastic. They give a nice solid feel to the rear end, and they really help limit motion. I think they make the biggest difference on the huge bumps and undulations that you encounter on highways, especially at bridge transitions. They didn't do much for the sway issue, but did reduce it some. I knew that our biggest remaining issue was sway control. While driving off-road, the truck likes to sway back and forth, but since I'm going really slow, I can easily control that with speed and brake usage. The swaying was something that we just got used to. I didn't like it, but I wasn't ready to spend the money on a sway bar. It was an upgrade that I knew I wanted to do, but it would have to wait for the right deal. Fast forward 2 years to the 2022 Truck Camper Adventure Rally, and that opportunity finally came. Hellwig was doing a bigwig sway bar install on a Tiger camper, and they were looking for someone to film it. A friend of ours caught wind of Hellwig's desire to have the process recorded and hunted me down. He introduced me to Mike Hallmark from Hellwig Products, and we got started on the install. That eventually became a video that I'll leave a link to down in the description. After the video was published, Mike Hallmark offered to send me a Hellwig bigwig sway bar as a way of saying thank you for making the video. It was the process of making that video that gave me firsthand experience on what a huge difference a sway bar makes. So once I got the bigwig sway bar delivered, I set out to install it. I got it installed just before leaving our previous work camp job at Dinosaur Valley RV Park in Glen Rose, Texas. Since then, I've only put about 350 miles on it, but wow, what a difference. It's hard to fully explain the difference in handling, but it makes a much bigger difference than I expected. Crossing over parking lot and road transitions at an angle always makes the truck sway from side to side. And while it still does move, it doesn't sway. Going around corners, avoiding obstacles, and just general driving feel quite different now. The truck feels planted and level. When driving off a low shoulder, over speed bumps, or over a curb, the truck no longer sways side to side. It just stays flat and returns to center with virtually no rocking. Before, going through a ditch at an angle seemed to be the worst. The truck would sway back and forth 4 to 8 times before settling down. Now, the sway doesn't happen. It'll rock to the side and then just return to center. It's a night and day difference. So, what are my conclusions? Well, now I feel like the suspension on our truck is rock solid and can easily handle the weight of our rig. We are maxed out on our GVWR, but still feel safe driving. I frequently inspect the truck frame, bed mounts, and suspension for signs of wear and damage, and so far, nothing has changed. I'm very happy with my incremental approach because I have a better understanding of what each component does. For leveling the truck and stiffening the factory suspension, you really can't go wrong with TorqueLift's upper and lower StableLoad combination. We have 55,000 miles on those, and they show little to no wear. The lower StableLoads have taken a beating, and the powder coating is flaking off, but they're still working perfectly. The upper StableLoads only show a tiny bit of wear, which is impressive considering what they've been through. If I had to do everything over again, I would still install the upper and lower StableLoads, but then immediately install a Hellwig bigwig sway bar. I personally think excessive sway is probably the most pervasive and dangerous issue that we face while hauling a truck camper. The Hellwig bigwig is the heaviest duty sway bar that I'm aware of, and I only have 350 miles on it so far, but after 2.5 years and 60,000 miles of driving our truck camper around, I realized what a mistake it was skipping the sway bar in the first place. As for shocks, replace them as needed. I'm very happy with the Bilstein 4600s, but I think any decent heavy-duty shock would do the trick. Bilstein shocks are known for a long life, and that was the main selling point for me. The TImbrens were not on my list of upgrades, but I am happy with them. I would definitely choose the StableLoads over the TImbrens if I had to choose one because of their flexibility and the fact that they engage the factory suspension. But a heavy-duty rubber bumper between your frame and axle, like the TImbrens, is also a very reliable, simple upgrade that has worked wonders. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how they would perform without the StableLoads because I'm too lazy to remove them and do an isolated test. My opinions on how to handle suspension upgrades are the following. Number 1, level the truck. This means using StableLoads, helper springs, airbags, whatever works for your situation. You want your truck to ride level and keep your headlights pointing in the correct direction. Number 2, sway control. Get a sway bar, a Hellwig bigwig or something else, but just do it. The difference is well worth it, and I'm kicking myself for not taking the advice of other campers 2 years ago. Live and learn. I should have installed a sway bar from day one. Number 3, upgrade your shocks when it's needed. Shocks do not replace a sway bar, but they do help prevent bouncing down the road. Number 4, suspension upgrades do not replace having an adequate truck. If you're over your GVWR, do everyone a favor and lighten the load or get a bigger truck. My next truck will be an F550 or a Ram 5500. I'm shopping right now, but they are very hard to find at the moment. What are your favorite suspension upgrades? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.